Let's talk about why Hollywood is in shambles right now and writers are currently on strike and how this could all be affecting your favorite movies and TV shows. The WGA, Writers Guild of America, has been in negotiation with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers to try and increase the pay for writers. May 1st was the cutoff point. They were supposed to come to an agreement, but they failed, and as a result, thousands of writers headed to the picket line to fight for their rights. This has been a crazy situation, and I was seeing it all over social media yesterday, but I didn't really know in detail everything, and when I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh. Plus, there were a lot of people getting called out, like Jimmy Fallon, which we are going to get into. It is a whole thing. This affects so much more than I think anybody knows about, so I wanted to make a video on it. Basically, the guild has said that they're asking for about 2% of Hollywood's profits to fund writers. But even that seems to be too much money for the studios to settle on. And this whole situation is having immediate effects to television. A lot of late night talk shows are going dark this week and won't be airing. This also includes Saturday Night Live, in which Pete Davidson was set to host with musical guest Lil Uzi Vert this weekend, but the episode has now been canceled due to the strike, and they will instead just air an old episode of SNL on Saturday. Scripted drama and comedy series are also affected by the strike, and it's unclear if it will be the same case, but some shows may be forced to cut their seasons short or postpone filming. The big reason the strike is happening is because with the introduction of streaming services, writers have lost out on big checks that were once provided by traditional broadcast television, and in the streaming era, companies are not abiding by television standards when hiring writers, and thus a lot of them are losing out on pay. Essentially, as much as TV has evolved and we're able to access streaming services, how writers are getting paid for their work has not evolved along with that process, and it is quite outdated, leaving them to not make as much money as they should. According to Variety, the Guild argues that studios are squeezing more work out of fewer writers over a shorter time span and paying them less than they're entitled to, and the union's leadership believes that it's time to set basic standards around the size and duration of a writer's room. There's also things like artificial intelligence being talked about, which writers are afraid as technology advances, their jobs will be replaced by new technology and miss out on checks entirely, and really want to find security in knowing that's not going to be the case, but they haven't been able to get that reassurance. So that's one of the things they're looking for, along with pay increases, residual rates, or pay for reusing a writer's work, as they claim it's been increasingly more difficult to make a living as a writer. Back in the day, you would hear about people doing a television show like Friends, for example, and even when the show was done, the checks still rolled in if the show would go into syndication, which Friends did, which is why it comes on like random times on TV here and there. And people involved in the production as a result of the syndication would get a pretty good sized check from it that they could live off. But with the involvement of streaming platforms, once a show has aired, there's not much opportunity for another check after the original airing, because most of those shows will be put onto the studio's own streaming platform, which pays way less than television syndication. Writers are essentially just getting that initial check for their writing, and then that's it, because they're claiming what is received from streaming services is not livable, which sucks. I mean, imagine you're hired to write a new show, you write it, you get paid a fee, and what the guild is basically claiming that is happening is that writers are being hired and they're getting paid the minimum, and then these studios turn around, put these shows that were written by them on their streaming platform, and then the studio just rakes in all this cash. And if it's a hit, then great for the studio, but you might not be reeling in that hit show money even though you were a writer for it. And so trying to get better residuals for their work is a huge conversation right now. And truly, writers are such a key element to these projects. It's sad that they aren't being compensated properly compared to those in the big suits, who wouldn't have these hit shows without writers. And some companies like HBO are trying to cut residual costs altogether by removing certain shows from their streaming platforms so they don't have to pay residuals on them at all. Recently, the show Gordita Chronicles was wiped from HBO along with several others in attempt to cut costs so they do not have to pay the people that worked on that show any residuals, and to kind of break down how big of a difference it is to have your show syndicated on television versus Netflix versus a studio streaming company. According to the Associated Press, per the Writers Guild of America West's contract with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, a single rerun of an hour-long primetime broadcast show on ABC would currently net its writer $24,558. But if the show were on Netflix, the writer would earn at most $20,000 in domestic residuals for the episode. And if the show were on a smaller streamer like HBO Max, the annual payment would max out at $13,346. Each additional year a show is on a streamer, the residuals decrease. That, of course, assumes the show remains part of the library. There's also been writers openly talking about the struggles they face trying to make it while also winning these grand awards for shows they've written, which sounds backwards because I think a lot of people watch these Hollywood award shows and just assume that everybody in the room is rich. But a writer for the Hulu show The Bear said that when the show was nominated for Best Comedy Series at the Writers Guild of America Awards in March, when he attended the ceremony, he had a negative bank account and dressed in a bow tie purchased with credit. Now, like I mentioned earlier, AI also plays a part into this strike. It is because writers want to know that they are not going to be replaced by future technology. They want to make sure that AI is not going to be taking their jobs and that AI will not be trained to take their jobs. And they really haven't been able to get a firm "don't worry about it" from the studios. And that has been really frustrating for them because essentially in order to train this AI to write like them, they would more than likely be using their writing, like their previous scripts and stuff, to train this AI to write just like them in order to replace their jobs. And that is just so frustrating to hear and to also not get any reassurance that that isn't going to happen. So it just adds to the list of things that the writers are not happy about and are trying to negotiate. Now, there's been several stars who are standing with the writers on strike, marching alongside them. Some actors are also part of the guild themselves, so it gives another reason for them to use their platforms to show support and bring awareness to what is going on. And some were asked at the Met Gala on Monday how they felt about a strike. And someone tweeted out when Jimmy Fallon was interviewed about this, and he said, "I wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for my writers. I support them all the way." But he was later called out by a senior photo research coordinator for his show, who quote tweeted this interview with Jimmy and said he wasn't even at the meeting this morning to tell us we won't get paid after this week. At Jimmy Fallon, please support your staff. Had fun bowling with you last week, but a fun party won't pay my rent. And she added staff and crew, I should say. She went on to say, at a meeting Jimmy wasn't even at, we are told NBC decided to stop paying us after this week and end our health insurance after this month if the strike is ongoing. They won't even tell us if we will technically be furloughed, just active employees who aren't paid. And that we shouldn't vent to coworkers. I should note that I am non-union and not a striking worker. This was to the rest of the staff and crew. I'm told Seth Meyers was in their Zoom production meeting and that he is going to try and take care of his staff and crew after NBC stops paying. And she also said that Steve Higgins is on the picket line with them, who is the Tonight Show announcer and a SNL producer. And Variety tweeted out this photo of him at the picket line. So this strike is affecting a lot of people, and Jimmy is definitely not looking so good, saying that he supports the strike. Meanwhile, with his show going dark, it means that everybody else that works on that show is also not going to be able to have a job, and it's sounding like them not even having health insurance at the end of the month is a super scary thought, along with not having any pay. So there's just a lot going on here. There's a lot of factors to this. The last writer's strike was about 15 years ago, and that lasted 7 months, and it led to a lot of shows shortening their seasons and brought a rise to viewers in reality television because there was kind of nothing really else going on. Some reports are saying the strike right now will be affecting the release of things like Stranger Things' final season, House of Dragons, the 3rd season of Abbott Elementary might be cut short, among several other projects. It's unclear how long this strike will be. We'll just have to see, but as of right now, that's what's going on in Hollywood and the mess that it kind of is. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye, guys.